What's up, guys? 1-1 last night for a slight win because the loser was on that money line underdog on the Cincinnati Reds. So a little bit less money on that to try to win the same amount. Very small win yesterday. The under in the Braves, Seattle got there by a half run, but still we'll take it. The Cincinnati one, the way the market completely shifted on that, I really started not liking it. A first five, actually, I think would have pushed on that. I think it was 1-1 through 5. Both starters actually didn't do too badly in that game. Then the Cincinnati bullpen was pretty bad in the game. It's unfortunate. And I was right about some of those leans. I had a fairly strong lean, like the Dodgers I mentioned would have been probably the next one. That was the first one that I kind of left off my card. And that, of course, wound up being a winner. So that's great. Well, yeah, you never like to leave money out there, but it's easy on the table there, but it's easier to say, of course, in hindsight. We move on to today. We do have NHL. Of course, we will say congratulations to the Edmonton Oilers who won yesterday, finished off their series. And I believe Colorado, I forgot to mention, congratulations to the Colorado Avs. They won their series, I believe, the night before that, which I kind of completely forgot about. They pretty much dominated that series, even though they lost the first game. It was like over, and Edmonton also dominated. It's going to be interesting to see what happens between those two teams. I think those two teams play each other next, I think, right? Or is that not right? I don't even know. Or does, I forget actually who plays whom there. But that'll be interesting if you wind up getting a Colorado against Edmonton matchup. I don't know if that might not happen until the finals. I forget. But my NHL bracket is actually still perfect. I'm going to jinx myself. But I believe 5 of the 8 series are done at this point, and I have Boston, Dallas, and who else is left? Vancouver, I think, are the remaining teams that I have winning in those matchups. So we will see what winds up happening in those. I don't expect an NHL playoff bracket because it's just so chaotic. I don't expect it to continue to be perfect, although I do have all the first round series that have finished correct so far, and I believe the teams that I have and the other ones are all leading in the series. So we'll see what happens there. And I have Carolina over Edmonton in the final in that one, which I believe is basically the best defensive team against the best offensive team. All right. NHL, there's one game, and it's game 6 between the Bruins and Toronto, going back to Toronto. The market indicators do appear to be signaling on Boston. This is a 3-2 series lead now for the Bruins. My Bruins. Toronto down from -125 to -110. So we do see some movement on the money line towards Boston. Boston, 65% of the tickets, 81% of the cash. So it looks like the cash discrepancy, more of the cash is coming in on Boston according to the line movement and the percentage of cash that I see here, which gives me a little bit of hope. But the fact that the Bruins blew a 3-1 series lead last year with 2 remaining home games, it seems like that might happen again. Hopefully it doesn't. The Bruins seem to be set on Swayman being in net now, which I think is good because he's the hot goalie right now. He's very good, and they seem to be playing better with him generally, but they did not play well in the most recent game, or they could have closed it out as favorites at home in game 5. The offense was the problem in that game. Swayman was fine. I think he played pretty well. There were a couple of situations where Toronto had like power plays and stuff where it really looked like the Bruins were up against it, and they didn't allow any goals on those. And Bruins, despite not playing very well and allowing Toronto to be in their zone for a majority of the game, really. Swayman was able to play pretty well in the game. The Bruins were able to not lose in regulation in that one, but they wound up losing in overtime, which is terrible because it's like, well, overtime, you set the reset button. Like, just play well and win the game. But no, that wasn't the case there. For some reason, Bruins coach decided to kind of shift their lineups a little bit, especially their, like, I think, 3rd and 4th lines. He kind of made some moves there. He brought some guys that weren't playing, Grzelcyk, and I forget who else. He brought some of these other guys back in, which kind of seemed to disrupt their offense a little bit, disrupt their momentum a little bit. So I don't love that happened, but hopefully they'll be able to get, since those guys, if they're playing again, they'll have a game under their belt now. So hopefully that will help the Bruins out. The Bruins are 2-0 in the road games in the series so far. So they've played fine on the road, pretty well, really, on the road in the series. But I don't know if that's going to be the case here, but the market indicators are indicating in that direction. Moving over to the NBA, congratulations to my Boston Celtics. Obviously, a blowout win against the Heat. I mean, the Heat were just overmatched in that series. It was shocking the Heat won that one game that they did, really. Once that happened, I told you it was going to be a 5-game series. Celtics just an insurmountable favorite, basically, in every one of the remaining games. Celtics were able to get it done. Another easy blowout win despite being without Porzingis. It looks like now Porzingis is going to be out for the entirety of the next series, which it's not great. You want your guys to be healthy, man, especially starters like that. So the Celtics will be without their starting big man in Porzingis, which hopefully that doesn't catch up with them. I don't know, man. The Celtics are still going to be the favorite against either Cleveland or Orlando, and they have to sit around and wait to see which one of those teams it's even going to be, which I think is actually a disadvantage. I think when a team wins a series like quickly early on and they have to wait for a team to win like a longer series, I don't think that extra rest is actually helpful. I think it starts to turn into rust. So hopefully that's not going to become the case with the Celtics, but you might look to play against the Celtics in game 1 of the next series, unfortunately. But the Celtics will be a home favorite in that series against either of those potential opponents. And hopefully they'll be able to get it done without Porzingis. I mean, Porzingis, the Celtics are only like slightly worse, I think, defensively without Porzingis. And I think they actually score slightly more without him on the court, which is a little bit weird. But it seems to be like the Celtics don't play significantly worse without him. Unlike the other game that we saw, I should have looked into the game further, the Dallas Mavericks game yesterday, because Kawhi Leonard was indeed out, which is what I mentioned. I thought that was the case, which is why the line was where it was, with Dallas being a 3-point favorite. I think they moved up to like a 3.5-point road favorite. Kawhi Leonard absolutely matters, man. It was not an injured player theory type of spot, even though they had him in there for a couple of games and now he was out again. I actually think it might have been the second game without him. I think he only played games 2 and 3 of that series, maybe. I'm not even sure, but they really were missing him last night, man. And Dallas had a big, easy win on the road at the Clippers last night, a blowout win for the Dallas Mavericks. Clippers, significantly worse team, both offensively and defensively without Kawhi. They are kind of a mess of a team, I would say, chemistry-wise. I mean, James Harden, like I always say, there's a reason why he doesn't stick with one team for that long. I think he is a chemistry disruptor, even though he is one of the more talented players in the league. He's also getting up there in age, too, and they do have Paul George as well, Russell Westbrook. They have a star-studded team there. It's just they don't mesh. They don't come together, man. So I am rooting for Dallas in that one. I like to see Luka continue on, and I have Dallas in my bracket actually getting to the conference finals and beating the Thunder. So we'll see what winds up happening there. If Dallas advances, they're going to be facing a Thunder team that is sitting around for a long time and might have some rust. And the Thunder, very green, as I keep saying, not a very experienced playoff team. The 2 NBA games that are today, it looks like there is a discrepancy. The cash on the opposite side of the tickets in both games for the sides. Knicks, Sixers are sitting at a 2.5-point favorite. It looks like it's gone up from 2.5 to 2.5 with juice. This is at Philadelphia. Philadelphia was able to extend the series with a road win, so it's now 3-2 Knicks. And of course, as I keep saying, debatably, Philadelphia could have won all 3 of the road games so far. Really, the only decisive loss that they had was in whichever game it was, game 3, I think, at home. Was it 3? Or no, it was 4, I guess. I don't even remember. I think it was I forget. Whatever game it was. There was one game where they actually decisively lost, and the other ones they did not. 54% of the tickets are on the Sixers, so the public still kind of liking the Sixers with Joel Embiid and not liking the Knicks, who are a more defensive-oriented team, even though Jalen Brunson is absolutely a star. He seems to just be kind of just an under-the-radar type of guy as far as like how good he is. It seems like people still don't realize it. 63% of the cash on the Knicks. So the market indicators, the cash discrepancy do appear to be on the Knicks, even though the line has moved up a little bit on the Sixers. I would kind of lean to the Knicks to bounce back after they didn't exactly play the best game at home there. Going out on the road, getting to forget about that might be a good thing. Sixers have been playing they've been playing pretty well in the series, even though they were down 3-1 in the series. Like I said, that was not really indicative of how the Sixers have played. Sixers have been in and were leading in the games that they lost, except for one of them. So they could have won all but one of them. and could have won the series already if a few things had gone differently. The Knicks made a ridiculous comeback in one of those first 2 games. Sixers blew leads in both of them. Now back at home for the Sixers, where the Sixers had their worst game of the series on their home floor at one point. So I don't know. I think the Knicks might bounce back a little bit. They might have the adjustments to make coming out of that prior game there. That would be the way that I lean. I'm not going to make a play on this one, but the cash discrepancy appears to be on the side of the Knicks there. But this has been a tough series for me to gauge, man. I don't even think I've gotten involved in the series at all. The total in this one is low now, too, down from 201 to 199.5. So, like, when it gets later in these series, you could maybe make some arguments for unders starting to come in. But the unders are the best plays, I think, in 2-2 and 3-3 series in games 5 and 7. But even in a game like this where both teams still kind of need to win this game and are probably going to show up defensively, you could argue for the under in this one, but I don't think you're getting any value with it, really, as the line has dropped a bit too much. I mean, a couple of games ago, the total in the series was in the mid-200s, like 206 range, and now it's only 199. So even if, you might lean to the under, there are definitely arguments for the under. I don't think there's that much value playing it at that number. It opened at 201, like I said, so that would have been a better number to get in on it. Bucks-Pacers is the other game. The Bucks extended that series, playing a very injured Bucks team there, but the Bucks do have depth. Like I was kind of mentioning with the Celtics have enough depth that they can overcome the Porzingis injury. The Bucks are dealing with so many injuries that maybe that's less so the case. Still without Giannis, and they're going to be without Lillard still based on the line in this game. The Bucks just without so many players now, man. It's like, are they just going to finally just like succumb to all these injuries here? Even though the Bucks have been playing surprisingly well, given all the injury situations, have been pretty good in this series, man, which might also be indicative that the Pacers might not be really that great of a team. Of course, we know they're not very good defensively. They are very good offensively. Bucks have 60% of the tickets on them in this case, with I think the public coming in and still like looking at what the Bucks did in the most recent game. A blowout win for the Bucks actually really is a home underdog there against the Pacers, where I'd mentioned that I thought the Bucks were getting too many points in an elimination game like that. And I felt the Bucks were not just going to roll over and that they were still going to show up and play, and they did. Kind of mad that I didn't take that game, but I didn't think it was quite strong enough. But in this game, we do have 60% of the tickets public coming in on the Bucks. I think probably because of that and because they think this line is just too big. Pacers have 60% of the cash on them, however. Line sitting at 8 in this one, which is actually less than it was, I think, in the previous home game for the Pacers, even though I think the Bucks are still without both Giannis and Lillard coming into this game. The line would kind of indicate that that's the case. I think it was when it was just Giannis being out, I think the Pacers were closer to like a 6-point favorite. And then the first game with Lillard out, with Giannis still out, of course, because he's missed the entire series, the Pacers are actually a 10-point favorite. So now the books have for some reason split the difference here at 8, which I thought the 10 was too high. So I think 8 is a more reasonable line, but my lean would kind of be to the Pacers in this one, man. I just think the Bucks, with these injury issues, man, I just am not sure that they're going to be able to keep that up for multiple games in a row like this. Pacers really don't want to have a game 7 on the road in Milwaukee. So I think the Pacers are going to be motivated. That plus they lost kind of embarrassingly in the previous game. So I think that's going to mean the Pacers are going to show up and have the adjustments to make. They're not going to be complacent now. Maybe they were a bit complacent, realizing, hey, we're facing a very injured Bucks team here. But then you get wiped out by that injured Bucks team. I think you're going to be like, oh, we actually have to pay attention here. So my lean would be to the Pacers in that one. Unfortunately, because I had the Bucks winning that series in my bracket. I also had the Sixers winning the other series in my bracket. I was not accounting for how injured those teams might wind up being. The Sixers, of course, playing with the Joel Embiid injury. He's playing through his injury, but he's obviously not at 100%. And I mentioned he seems to have like Bell's palsy or something, which is affecting his, I don't know, his sight and like his face to some extent. I don't know. It's very weird. He's playing pretty admirably through all those injuries, though. But anyway, where's my actual play? It's going to be on this very small baseball card here. We have only 6 baseball games here today. I think I'm going to go to the Interleague, and I'm going to play against my Boston Red Sox. This is going to be my only play today, is to take the Giants. And I wavered back and forth as to whether I wanted to make this a 5-inning play or a full game. I think that 5-inning play makes sense because I think this is a pitching mismatch with the starting pitching, but I think that San Francisco is going to be motivated enough to avoid getting swept, which is an angle that I like to look at. And the bullpen situation isn't bad enough for San Francisco that I still think a full game is warranted here. The Red Sox are down from -115 to -110 on the money line, even though they do have the public 74% of the tickets on. It looks like 94% of the cash, however, is also on Boston, on my Red Sox there. I don't know if that cash discrepancy is accurate, though, because we do see the line moving against the Red Sox. And I saw some books even have San Francisco as like the favorite, is even like the run line favorite here. I think you can get like San Francisco actually at +100 right now as an underdog. I see anything from +100 all the way up to -106 right now on San Francisco on the money line. So any one of those prices I think will do there. The plus even money looks pretty nice to me there. What we have here is, like I said, the Red Sox are on the verge of a sweep. They won each of the first 2 games of the series. I don't even know what the scores were, 6-1 and 6-4 or something like that. I can look real quick here. No, 4-0 and 6-2. Sorry. Yeah, so the Red Sox have done well in the series. The Giants just haven't been able to score in the series, man. But the Giants, they were traveling cross country for that first game and having to face, I think, Cutter Crawford, who's been pitching okay, even though he struggles in night games. He was kind of in a bounce back spot too. So I don't know if that was the greatest spot for the Giants there, and they were facing a pitcher who's been pitching decently, who they were unfamiliar with. Then last night, the Giants lost by 4. Actually, Crawford was last night. Sorry. So Crawford, an unfamiliar pitcher to San Francisco. I don't know who pitched in the first game for the Red Sox. So that was like kind of a bad travel spot for San Francisco, at least, even though they were starting a road trip, having to travel cross country. Not exactly the easiest thing to do. The one thing I don't love is that last night, the Giants did use 4 of their relievers, but one of them was Jeffries, who came in after Miller only made a 1-inning start, which Giants were at a disadvantage yesterday, having basically no starter in the game yesterday. They had a guy who could only go 1 inning, really, and he walked 2 guys in the inning and escaped. Then they brought in Jeffries to kind of eat up some innings, 2 2/3, which I think kind of saved the rest of their bullpen. And then after that, because I think the game was a little bit almost over at that point, I think they used some of their relievers who aren't really the best relievers. I don't think either team really used their best relievers here, but San Francisco did use 3 other relievers and Boston used 2. But I don't know. I think the bullpen situation isn't like a huge edge one way or the other, even though I think the Red Sox generally do have the slightly better bullpen, and their bullpen's in the slightly better rest spot. So I could see them playing. I could see playing a 5-inning bet here because of that, and because I think the huge advantage here is the starting pitching matchup. But I think full game also is warranted because I don't think the bullpen situation is bad enough. And as I always say, I think the team that's trying to avoid the sweep tends to be undervalued. The team that is on the verge of the sweep, like the Red Sox, could tend to get a little bit overconfident. And this is not a very good Red Sox team. I think they're overvalued right now because their record looks pretty good right now, but I don't think they're as good as their record indicates. It's not a very good Red Sox team, man. So that, combined with the fact they might get a little bit overconfident, having beaten the San Francisco team twice, and San Francisco might show up to try to avoid the sweep here and have the extra motivation there because of that. It's an angle I like to look at. And then the biggest angle here is the starting pitching matchup, man. You got Kyle Harrison pitching for the Giants here. I think that's a decided advantage for the San Francisco Giants here. I mentioned Harrison. I played him in his last game, and he pitched well, but he didn't get a decision. I think it was a game San Francisco actually had to win in overtime. It was a bad spot for Pittsburgh, but San Francisco still just couldn't hit in that game. Their offense is a bit of a question mark, man. But Kyle Harrison, he's been pretty good on the season, man. He has a 31.5 strikeout walk ratio in 33 innings pitched. That's pretty good. The 5 home runs allowed isn't great. And other than that, his stats have been pretty good, man. I mean, those home runs account for a lot of the runs he's allowed. He has not allowed a home run in each of his last 2. He did allow 3 earned runs in 3 straight starts prior to that shutout performance against Pittsburgh, but he was consistent, at least allowing 2, 4, 3, 3, 3 earned runs and then 0 earned runs. So he's been pretty decent basically the whole time. That strikeout walk ratio is good, man. That leads me to believe that he is pitching pretty well, and he has good command of his pitches with that many strikeouts and that few walks. 4.09 ERA should probably be a little bit lower based on that strikeout walk number. Strikeout walk ratio. His ERA makes him look maybe a little bit worse than he actually is, and a 1.24 whip is mediocre. So He's given up a few too many hits, I guess, more than one per inning. So he's got to keep that down. But his walk numbers are really good. And then, of course, the main advantage he has here is that the Red Sox, aside from Garrett Cooper, who, is 1 for 3 off him with a home run and a strikeout. But what can you really take away from that? Probably not a lot. 3 at-bats. He did hit a home run against him once, and he did strike out against him once. Very small sample size. I don't think much that you can figure out based on that. Other than that, the Red Sox hitters have never faced Kyle Harrison before. So I think that's an edge for Kyle Harrison, who's a guy who does have good stuff. He's been putting up, I said, those good strikeout walk numbers this year. Decent stuff. And the fact the Red Sox are unfamiliar with him, it's going to take a little while for them to adapt to him. So I like that. I think Harrison has the edge. As I say, these young pitchers who have decent stuff and who are decently good, it's always, I think it tends to be an advantage for them when they're facing a lineup of hitters who haven't seen him before. So I think that is an edge, especially earlier in the game. So again, I could see this being a 5-inning play as well. And then on the other side, Josh Winkowski is pitching for the Red Sox, man. And that is just, there's nothing to like about Winkowski. I'm sorry to say. Josh Winkowski, his stats this year, he has a 3.5 ERA. So the average bettor might come in and look at this and say, oh, Winkowski has the better ERA, 3.5 to Harrison's 4, and the Red Sox have won both games in the series, and we're getting a cheap price on the Red Sox here. We'll take the Red Sox, right? No, I mean, come on. You got to slow your roll a little bit there. I mean, Winkowski, his whip is 1.67, which is terrible. Like, his metrics are all basically awful besides that ERA. Like, somehow he's managed to escape in a lot of cases. That ERA is lower than it should be. He's a guy who's pitched in short stints, man. Some of these might have been relief appearances. I'm not even really sure, but the starts that he's made, most of them are relief appearances. And the starts that he's made, he did not go deep into the games, and he does not have the ability to go deep into games. The last outing that he had 3 shutout innings against the Cubs, but he was backed by a huge offensive output. That was the game the Red Sox won 17-0. So Winkowski really had no pressure on him in that game. He's a guy who does not go deep into games, man. So I think that alleviates some of the bullpen concerns too, with the fact that the Red Sox are almost guaranteed to have to go to their bullpen sooner than the Giants will have to, with Winkowski being a guy who cannot go deep into games and being the significantly worst of the 2 pitchers here. The most that he's gone was that 3 innings, or actually he had a 3 1/3 inning start prior to that. So his starts actually haven't been that bad, but he's only struck out 1 guy in each of those starts. So, and he was facing offenses that might have just struggled a little bit. I don't know, man. Winkowski, his ERA just looks better than he actually is. And if you look at his stats as a whole, like I said, his whip is terrible this year. He has 19 strikeouts in 18 innings, which is pretty good, but he's also walked 8 guys and allowed 22 hits. So he's allowed 30 base runners in 18 innings, and 7 earned runs isn't that bad, but 14 runs allowed. So he's allowed 7 unearned runs as well. So having some errors behind him, but I mean, he's put guys on base, man. So when you put guys on base, bad things are going to happen. So he's allowed double the amount of earned runs that he's allowed. He's allowed double that amount of runs. So he's been putting way too many guys on base. That is just bad. Putting like more than 1.5 base runners on base an inning, terrible. And then, his career stats. I mean, last year his ERA looked okay. He was almost entirely a reliever last year. 2.88 ERA, but 1.42 whip indicates that his ERA should have been way, way higher. That's a terrible whip. 1.52 on his career. He had way too many walks. Just all over his career, his walk numbers are just awful. 66 and 172 2/3. Way too many walks and only 145 strikeouts. Not a strikeout guy. And he had 14 starts in his first season with the Red Sox. He is a young guy still. Yeah, he's 25. But his season where he started for the Red Sox for basically the entire season that he pitched for half a season, basically 14 starts. He had a 5.89 ERA, 1.59 whip, 27 walks in 70 1/3 innings, and only 44 strikeouts. There's really not much to like about his numbers at all. And then San Francisco, some of their guys have seen him before. 5 of their hitters have seen him before, and they're 7 for 11 off of him lifetime, with a double, a triple, a home run, 4 RBIs, 3 walks, and only 2 strikeouts. So even though it's a small sample size, it's limited playing time. These San Francisco Giants hitters have pretty much had Winkowski's number, man, to the tune of a 636 opponent batting average, 714 on base percentage, and 1,896 OPS. I mean, his numbers against these San Francisco Giants hitters, like I said, it's a limited sample size, but that is just awful, awful. he is the significantly worse pitcher, man. I don't think the matchup sets up well for Winkowski or for the Red Sox here. Although, of course, I don't expect him to struggle as much as those numbers. Like, those numbers are just unbelievably awful, but he has not done well against these Giants hitters. So I think the edge has to go to Harrison and the Giants here. That's going to be the one play. San Francisco Giants plus 100. Let's get it done today, man. Short card today. Enjoy the games. Peace.